and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and this is my weekly reading wrap up. So this past weekend I went to a coffee and chocolate festival. It happens I think twice a year, or at least once a year, around here at a big expo center, and it is fantastic. All kinds of chocolate and coffee vendor and a few other vendors, but who cares about them? I'm just there for the coffee and some of the chocolate as well. I found some fantastic things, which I will try to remember to show you, but right at this moment, I don't want to go grab them. I kind of just want to talk about the book that I have finished reading this week. And so maybe I'll put at the end, I will put my little, a little bit of a tiny mini haul from the Coffee Chocolate Festival and share with you some clips that I took there. But for now, let's talk about my reading. I am in the middle still of a bunch of books. I have started Bridge to Haven by Francine with Alma. She and I are buddy reading that. And I think we're about halfway through that. So I will finish it up at some point next week. So far, really enjoying it. It's not a perfect read for me, so it's probably not going to get like 5 stars, but probably it's looking about 4 stars right now. It's really good. It's really engrossing. I'm enjoying it. The story is captivating, and I'm really anxious to see how everything will turn out and how Francine will finish up this story, work through all the things that the character needs to go through for her development. So enjoying that. I'm also in the process of reading Miracles by C.S. Lewis. I finished chapter 14 today, and I think there are 3 more chapters. Chapter 14 was a long one, so it took me a couple days to work through that one, especially because I had stuff going on and didn't do as much reading the past couple of days. But I'm looking forward to finishing that this week. So I will, Lord willing, be able to share a clip with that later on. That may be the only thing that I end up finishing this week. I also, as part of the Bucket-List-a-thon, which I started last week, the next one that I rolled to read was the Scarlet Pimpernel. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Bucket-List-a-thon, but there's 4 corners and you are supposed to start on one, depending on what your goals are. And my goal is to work through some of my physical TBR and my reading goals for this year. I don't have a lot of reading goals specific to this year, other than doing some rereads, which I do need to finish. But I have some other like ongoing reading goals and like my 50 by 50 goals. Anyway, those kind of reading goals that I always want to keep at the forefront and focus on those books. So I am trying to read from those that important books, TBR. And so I'm on the 4th roll, I think. And the next one that I wanted to pick up was the Scarlet Pimpernel, which also is my pick for a reading challenge that I am doing this year, where I am supposed to read for November a book that was recommended to me, and it has to be a classic. So I put the Scarlet Pimpernel on my list for like the 3rd month in a row as the TBR, but I am going to get to it this November, and it's like, it's on deck. It's ready for me. When I have a minute, I'm going to start reading it. As for what I have finished so far, I have finished reading The Road by Cormac McCarthy. And this I read for the Chantel's Read Your Shelf challenge. For me, for the November prompt was to read a book that intimidates me. And this was a book that was on my shelf that I hadn't picked up because I was a little bit intimidated by it. It seemed a little bit too literary, maybe, too angsty, too depressing and dark. And yeah, honestly, it was all of those things. It was all of those things, but it was much easier to read than I expected. And in fact, I'm feeling really torn about how I feel about this book. There are parts of me that say it's a 5-star read, and there are parts of me that say it's a 2-star read. And those parts of me are not in agreement to this day. So I settled on a 4 on Goodreads. That's what I ended up putting it at. I have mixed feelings about it. So what did I love and what did I not love? What did I love? Okay, so I loved the characters. There's really, really only 2 characters in this story. And they don't have names. It's called The Man and the Sun. And they are on a journey in a post-apocalyptic world where there was some kind of nuclear disaster or something like that. And nothing is alive, nothing is growing. The rain and the snow are like gray and dull, so like they're not nourishing the earth, so they are trying to survive. The people that they do come across, they have to be very careful and wary, because they could just be marauders, they could be cannibals, because everybody's desperate, there's no food, they're resorting to eating people, which leads to some of the dark and the gross and the disgusting and the depressing parts of the book. But ultimately, it's about the will to survive, and hope and compassion and courage. It is about good things, and there are just enough glimmers of those good things to keep you reading. And that is what I loved about it. And also, despite the literary style in which the story was told, it was very engaging. And it kept me reading, and I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to go on this journey with the characters, and I wanted to see what was around the next corner of the road, what else was going to happen. And I was wanting, things to be good for them. I was cheering them on. I was wanting it to turn out well for them. So it kept me reading. So that's why I gave it 5 stars. Another reason why I would give it 5 stars, if I gave it 5 stars, would be that it really made me think. It really leads you to ponder some really deep thoughts, and to put yourself in these character situation and be like, what would I do, and what is right for them to do, and what would happen if, there's a lot of what if questions that it poses. And it is really good in that sense, and it makes you think, and it sticks with you. That's the kind of story that sticks with you. And those are all things that are like 5-star qualities for me, that normally, if those things are in a book, like I'm engrossed in the characters' lives, I want to read more, I don't want to put the book down, and the book makes me think, and it sticks with me afterwards, and I'm still pondering the things that happened in the story. Normally, that's like a straight up 5-star read for me. But there was enough detracting stuff that I couldn't give it 5 stars. So some of the detracting factors were the ending. The ending was big. The ending, for being, and I don't want to say this because I don't think that I know better than everybody, or I know better than, an excellent author who has finally honed his craft or whatever. But I have to admit that to me, the ending was awfully convenient. Like, it was a really, really super convenient ending. It saved the book from ending in a place of horrible tragedy and sadness. So I wouldn't have rathered that. I would have liked for it to have been handled a little more deftly. Again, I hesitate to say this because, I'm not an author, and I'm not even a critic. I'm just like a person who enjoys books or not. But I feel like a very similar ending could have been much more deftly written if a little more foreshadowing had been woven in, a little more of leading up to the ending. Part of the problem was the abruptness of it that led to a little bit of disbelief on the part of the reader. Like, that was awfully convenient. The ending was big for me. I did not approve of the ending. I mean, okay. Again, it made the ending happier than it would have been otherwise. But I just didn't feel like it was well done. I just have to say that honestly. And the other thing that I didn't like was it was very repetitive. And it's not a long book. It's only 241 pages, but it could have been a little bit shorter. It could have been 200 pages or less if the author had taken out, and again, I feel like I'm criticizing someone who is an expert in their field, and I'm not. So that feels a little silly, but just my honest opinion, whether it's valid or not, is that there was a lot of repetition of like extremely similar scenes and feelings. And it's like, okay, we get the point. We get the point. They're cold and they're wet and he's coughing a lot. Like, yes, that scene has been set. That horse had been hammered. We know that. So can we move on a little bit from that and get to a different, get to something different happening besides being cold and wet and coughing? And also, the punctuation was a little bit problematic for me, not as much as I thought it would be. Like there are 0 quotation marks in any of the conversations in the dialogue, which did occasionally prove to be a problem, but it wasn't throughout the book. Most of the time, it's just the man and his son talking to each other, and so it was pretty easy to track the conversation. But anytime it wasn't them, it was a lot harder. And even sometimes when it was their conversation, it was a little bit difficult to track the way that it was written. So I think some punctuation would have not been amiss. And I get kind of the feeling that he was trying to evoke. Like someone in a review said, whatever happened that obliterated the world as they knew it, apparently obliterated all the punctuation too. Just took it all. So there wasn't any punctuation left. And that's honestly kind of the feeling that like we're past a world where people care about punctuation. They're just trying to survive. They don't care about if their, quotes are used properly. And also there are some lacking apostrophes, but not always, which was weird. Like any contraction that was like would not or have not or should not, like wouldn't, shouldn't, haven't, did not have an apostrophe. But every other type of contraction did have an apostrophe. Why? Is that like some secret message? I didn't get it if it was, and it was consistent, but at the same time inconsistent, because it doesn't seem to be a good reason to do it that way. So anyway, I feel like it's not my place to judge, but I'm judging anyway. So that's why I settled on a 4 for this one. So those are my thoughts about The Road. And I will be back later this week, hopefully with some more of my thoughts about Miracles by C.S. Lewis and perhaps whatever else I manage to read, if I manage to finish anything else this week. So I will see you next time. Bye. Hello. It is Saturday morning and this week has been crazy. So my sister fell and broke her ankle on Sunday and she had surgery on Thursday. So my other sisters and I, and in-laws and nieces and nephews, whatever, have been trying to help her out. We've had to stay with her because she can't walk. And so we've been helping her out. And so every extra minute has been going to that, which was time well spent, but I have done very little reading. I did, however, manage to finish Miracles because I was so close to finishing it anyway at the beginning of the week. I did manage last night, finally, to read the last bit of this book. So Miracles by C.S. Lewis was the group read for the C.S. Lewis Readathon, organized by Morgan at Morgan's Endless Bookshelf, which I'm also co-hosting. And this was also for the nonfiction prompt, Christian nonfiction prompt. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know anything about it before going into it. And I didn't realize, so I'm telling you, just in case you know nothing about it, it's basically an apologetic for a skeptic, coming from the lens of miracles. Because I guess many skeptics, miracles are, well, both Christian and non-Christian alike, but miracles are a point of contention because they seem impossible. And so it's very difficult to believe. So C.S. Lewis is addressing that. He's not walking through specific miracles, although towards the end he does some of that. The last third or so of the book is delving a little more deeply into some specific miracles and the nature of them, etc. It was very intellectual, very philosophical, and difficult because of that to read. It's not a pleasure read. You can't read it when you don't have the ability to concentrate on what you're reading, or you won't get half of what he's saying. Let's be honest. Even if you are fully aware and alert and intent on what you're reading, unless you are a more intelligent person than I am, you will still struggle with understanding exactly what he's saying. I'm sure there are some discussions in here and some thoughts that he had that I still am not 100% sure exactly what he was trying to say. There were some sentences and some paragraphs where I read them a couple of times and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna get that without doing some research to understand exactly what he's talking about. So, and it wasn't that important to me, and I understood enough of the gist of what he was saying and what his point was that I just skimmed over that kind of stuff. Once you get past the first 3 to 4 chapters, it was less so. the first 3 to 4 chapters were the hardest part, where he was kind of laying the groundwork for his argument and was getting, you know, really deep into the nitty gritty of things. And anytime you do that, you kind of lose me a little bit. I hated physics, the concept of physics in high school. When you're getting down into the finest details of things beyond what you can actually see and what is right in front of your face, tangible, whatever, when you start getting into that kind of stuff, you lose me. And so I struggle with that a little bit. So it is very, very intellectual and philosophical. I've already said that, but I don't really have another way to describe it. Overall, though, I did appreciate it, and I did enjoy going on this mental, logical journey with C.S. Lewis of exploring the concept of miracles and how they interact with nature. I mean, I've not spent any time before this in my life even contemplating such things. So it was really good in that sense to take the time to contemplate miracles from his perspective and to consider nature and how God interacts with nature and the reality of what nature is and what it isn't, and how we interact with nature. I mean, he touches on all of that. And so it was very interesting. I would disagree with C.S. Lewis on a few finer points of his theology and of his thought process. But in the main, this was really a fascinating read and definitely worth reading for believer or otherwise. I mean, honestly, I think he mostly has in mind non-believers and skeptics, and he's, you know, aiming at convincing them. So yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile read. In the end, I gave it 3 stars, but that's more reflective of my personal enjoyment of it than of the actual worth of the book. I do think probably from that perspective, I would give it a 4. So maybe I would say 3.5 stars is where I would settle on this one. So I am glad that I read it, and I'm glad. I love to read a good, mentally challenging book that makes me think and ponder about stuff that I don't normally consider on a day-to-day basis. So I really appreciated it from that perspective. And it was a good read. So that is Miracles by C.S. Lewis. And I am very close to finishing a couple of other books, A Tangled Web. So I'm keeping on track with the reading schedule for the Montgomery group read, and we're scheduled to finish up this coming week. I'm almost done with chapter 5, and then there's chapter 6, I believe, is the last chapter. So I will finish this probably early in the coming week, and I'm enjoying it overall. It's definitely not my favorite book by Lucy Maud Montgomery, but it is interesting. It's a good book, and I want to get to the end and find out how everything plays out and how all of these different tangled story threads are resolved. I also will finish Bridge to Haven by Francine Rivers. Alma and I are buddy reading this, and I don't have too much more to go, and I'm really enjoying it. It's finally getting to the point in the story where things are looking up, and I'm starting to see where the resolution will begin to happen. So that's good, because for a while there, it was pretty heavy, and this book wades into deep waters, y'all. If you want a book that is going to grip you emotionally with the characters and is going to delve into some hard things, but still is overall redemptive and hopeful, then you will want to read this book. It's very similar to Redeeming Love in that way. In fact, of all of her books, I find it's come the closest to being in the nature and flavor of Redeeming Love. So if you liked that one, then you will probably also really enjoy this one. It's not as hard as that one. It doesn't get as much into the weeds of traumatic things, but it does have some of that. It's just in a kind of a different way. It's kind of hard to explain, but anyway, it is a good book, and I am looking forward to seeing how all of the different threads resolve, and the ending. I'm looking forward to getting to the end of this book. So I am excited to finish reading this one. And I said in my previous clip that I picked up Scarlet Pimpernel to start reading. Yeah, that did not happen. Like I said, I've had very little reading time. I've barely managed to keep on top of the group read schedules. I got behind on the buddy reading with Alma, so I've just not had time to even pick up the Scarlet Pimpernel. But that is on my plan this week. I'm off of work, and if I don't read anything else, I do need to read this one. So I'm going to be picking up the Scarlet Pimpernel as soon as I have finished either the Tangled Web or Bridge to Haven. That will be the next one. And hopefully before the week ends, I will have time to read another book and get another roll on the Bucket-List-a-thon and get at least halfway through that game. So I promised that I would share with you a little bit of a haul from the Chocolate and Coffee Festival that I went to last weekend. And so here we go. I will share also, I'll close out the video with some clips, hopefully, from that event that you might enjoy. But of course, I got coffee there. Like, that's the whole point, right? There were tons of different, mostly local coffee roasters and coffee shops who were there, mostly roasters or people who had like farms in South America, whatever, and they also roasted their beans and they were presenting them. So this one is by, it's Silencio Coffee, which if these, I'm sure mostly people have websites, so I can link to all of them in the description box if any of this sounds interesting to you. I had bought some coffee from this vendor at the last Coffee Chocolate Festival that I went to, and it was really good. And it's veteran owned, so I really wanted to support them. So when I came back this year and I saw their table, they had, I feel like it was all different blends that they had this time, and all different roasts. So I got the Gunfighter one, which is a 5-bean espresso blend, and it's made in Orange, Virginia. It's roasted in Orange, Virginia. And it sounded really good. And this is the one they had a sample of, and it was so good. It was perfect. And I love that it's an espresso blend, so I can use it in I don't always buy specifically espresso beans for my espresso machine. Yeah, I'm just not that particular, but I do like to have espresso beans for my espresso machine. So this is an espresso roast, and I am looking forward to opening that and digging into that. Some of them this year, for the first time, had a lot of sample packets that were only like $3 or $5. One place, I thought he said they had it for free, but I felt bad doing that because it was like this size, and that's a little money right there. So I didn't take it. I actually bought a little bit of coffee from him, but I can't remember which one that was. But anyway, so this is the Beltway blend, and it's by Interloop Coffee. So if you are from the DC metro area, you know exactly what it's talking about. The city of Washington, DC is surrounded by a beltway, and there's an outer loop and an inner loop. And that's how you go to get into DC, but also to get to Maryland, like from Virginia and Maryland, it's one of like 2 ways to get across. So all of us around here, very familiar with the Beltway and the inner loop, outer loop. And so I just thought it was so fun that they named their coffee They named their coffee after the Beltway. It's called the Beltway blend. So obviously very local coffee and roasted. And again, I had a sample of it and it was really good. So, but that was early on, and I didn't want to spend too much money because I hadn't like tried all the things yet. So I just bought their sample pack. And then this was towards the end. Not many of them had decaf. And I like to have decaf at night. So I was looking for a good decaf roast. And finally, one of the last vendors that I went to had this Brazilian decaf coffee. And this is one where they had like small farms in South America where they grow the coffee and roast it and everything. Samila Coffee Roasters. Again, I had a taste of this decaf and it was really good. So smooth and delicious. So I got that. And I'm anxious to finish up the decaf that I currently have, which is not nearly that good. It was just cheap decaf I picked up somewhere. And I want to start drinking that one. And then this woman had, she made her own extracts. And I think she said she used she was telling me some kind of grain-based alcohol. And she had all kinds of different flavors of extracts. And she actually used like the food ingredients to create her extracts. It wasn't like artificial flavors or even like oils or anything. It was she used the actual food to create her extracts. And I picked up the orange one. She had a lot of different flavors that I was curious, and I just eventually settled on the orange. So I'm looking forward to using that in my cooking and baking over the Christmas season, but also in making some yummy coffee drinks. And then every year I go to the Coffee and Chocolate Festival, I get something from this vendor, which is Spice and Nice. And they have 5 different spice blends that are particularly designed to either brew in your coffee or sprinkle on the top. So like if you make a latte or a cappuccino or something, you can sprinkle on top. They have like a fine like sprinkle one, or you can use this and like dump it in your grounds when you're brewing, whatever method you're using to brew. And like this blend, the cardamom rose blend, has actual like cardamom pods in it. So it's really nice to put in to the coffee grinds. So yeah, I got the cardamom rose flavor, and they have like a lavender flavor and a chai flavor. So good. Saving the best for last. I had mentioned when I went to Boston earlier this year, I went to a bookstore, the Beacon Hill bookstore, and they had these chocolate bars that were based on classic books. And so I got one for my sister. And then when I got home, I was looking at it and I realized it was made by my favorite chocolate company here in Virginia, River Sea Chocolates. But it's actually a mom and daughter couple. They come up with the recipes essentially and the design and, you know, everything for the chocolate bars, but then the chocolate company makes them and then they sell them. So this one is called A Christmas Carol. I thought that was appropriate for this season. And this is the ingredients in this one: hazelnuts, pears, and nutmeg in dark chocolate. So if you are looking for great gifts for book lovers in your life, or if you want to put this on your Christmas list, they have all different classic books: Pride and Prejudice, Dracula, I believe they have Les Mis, all kinds of classic books. And they have recipes, and they tell you on the back like where they arrived at the ingredients that they use. This one says, "Our Christmas Carol chocolate bar is inspired by the scene in which Ebenezer Scrooge discovers the ghost of Christmas present in the room adjoining his bedchamber. The ghost transforms the room with an extravagant feast, mountains of meat, fruit, and sweets. Our chocolate bar contains the luscious pears, quote unquote, of this lavish meal, along with hazelnuts and nutmeg for a truly Victorian holiday." That is the open book chocolates, and they're very good. So I was so excited to get this one, and I will again link to them because you can order from their website and they will ship anywhere. And these are great stocking stuffers or gifts for book lovers. All right, so that is my haul, and that is my week of reading. And I'm hoping this coming week, because I'm off, although I do still have a lot planned for Thanksgiving week, but I think I will have some downtime and I will actually be able to get some real quality reading time done. So hopefully I will wrap up a lot of my goals for November this coming week. Wish me luck. And I will close out this video with some clips from the Coffee and Chocolate Festival, and you can drool over it like I did when I was there. And I will see you next time. Bye.